This is the Comics Alternative for young readers. Reviews of Compass South, Secret Coders 2, and Level Up.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative for Young Readers. I'm Andy.
And I'm Gwen, and we're two PhDs talking about comics.
And on today's podcast, we're going to talk about three new books: Compass South by Hope Larson and Rebecca Mock, Secret Coders, Paths and Portals by Gene Luen Yang and Mike Holmes, and a reissue of a book called Level Up by Gene Luen Yang and Thien Pham. But before we get to those titles, we would like for everybody to know that this episode of the Comics Alternative for Young Readers is sponsored by Discount Comic Book Service. So go to dcbservice.com for all of your pre-ordering needs. There you'll find DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles for 40% off. You'll find other publishers' discounts at 20 to 35% off, and you'll find specials that are 45 to 50% off the cover price, and sometimes the discounts get even more out of control than that.
I know, we almost have to contain ourselves deal with the discount. Okay, so there are a couple kids bundles that I want to tell you about. The first is the DC Kids Bundle, which is a great value. DCBS has Scooby-Doo Team Up number 18 and Scooby-Doo Where Are You number 73. And that's for only $2.98, which is 50% off of the cover price. And there's also a wonderful Marvel Kids Bundle that includes Marvel Universe Avengers Ultron Revolution, Marvel Universe Guardians of the Galaxy number 12, Marvel Universe Ultimate Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six number 3, although Sinister Six would be funny.
That might be pretty sinister as well.
I would actually read that right away. $4.47, which again is 50% off the cover price. So, you can always head over to DCBS because they have such great deals on the comics that we all love.
They really do. And if you were listening to the show yesterday, you know that Gwen and I talked about the Eisner Award winners and the nominees as well, especially in the young readers category. So if you didn't get a chance to check that show out, please do check that one out and find out about some really, really great books that we both had a lot of great things to say about. And the books themselves are pretty awesome. But today, we are talking about three new books, actually two new books and a reissue of a book that came out a few years ago. So, Gwen, do you want to get us started?
Absolutely. Our first text is a proper graphic novel. In fact, it's being released in hardback form. It's called Compass South. It's an adventure comic, and it's written by Hope Larson and illustrated by Rebecca Mock. And that's kind of interesting in and of itself, Andy, because we're used to thinking of Hope Larson as being the sole author and illustrator of her own graphic novels, including Chiggers and her wonderful rendition of Madeleine L'Engle's Wrinkle in Time and others. So it's really exciting to see here that she has turned the artwork primarily over to another comics creator, Rebecca Mock, and has been responsible for the storyboarding and the narrative and the dialogue in this comic. So that was a bit of a departure. I was surprised to see that when it showed up in my mailbox. I was like, wow. I thought for sure that she would be the artist, maybe Rebecca Mock would be the co-author, etc. So that was exciting. Well, this is a very adventurous text that's set in 1860, and it goes from New York City to New Orleans to Cape Horn to San Francisco. So you need to sort of strap on your passport and get ready because it is a pretty intense situation. I'm going to read you the jacket description because it does a better job than I would off the cuff, because there's a lot of characters in this text, including 2 sets of redheaded twins. So you already know that you've got a pretty big cast list here. So it reads, when their father goes missing, 12-year-old twins Alexander and Cleopatra Dodge join the Black Hook gang and basically become sort of street urchins who do petty theft along the lines of something like Oliver, right? Or from Oliver Twist, right? Soon after, Alex is arrested for burglary, but the twins cut a deal with the police chief and leave town to start a new life. They assume different identities, and basically Cleopatra cuts her hair so that she looks and dresses like a boy. So from about 10 or 12 pages into the comic until through to the end, she and her brother look almost identical. There are visual clues that you're given as to who is who, but basically we have some cross-dressing and it's exciting that Cleopatra gets to have adventures that she wouldn't have had, as she herself says, had she been dressed like a girl with her long hair, etc. Basically, the twins get this wonderful idea from an advertisement that they see in a newspaper that they can go and present themselves as the heir to this wealthy gentleman who has been separated from his own twins, who are about their age and also have red hair. And since their father has gone missing and they're not sure that he's ever going to return, they think that this would be a way to sort of start life anew. But, of course, tragedy occurs, or at least fate intervenes, as another set of twins, two boys, have gotten the same idea, Silas and Edwin, and they bump into, as fate would have it, Alex and Cleo as they try to get on a ship to go to San Francisco in order to show up at the doorstep of this man who's put out the advertisement for his children. What adds to the excitement is that Cleo and Alex have been given by their late mother, who died in childbirth, had given them a locket or a pocket watch, and a knife. And it turns out that those gifts actually work in tandem to basically unlock some important information. And the story becomes complicated when you have both members of the gang that Alex and Cleo used to be part of trying to find them, as well as a pirate who has apparently inside information as to how the pocket watch and the knife can be used to get to buried treasure. And so it's a chase narrative in a lot of ways, but it's also a text in which, because the twins are separated out and go on these adventures together, you get a sense both for their developing relationships with, it's basically, I think, Silas and Cleo and Ed and Alex that are together? I think that's the way that it sorts out.
I think that's it. Yeah.
I needed a genealogy for this because just both visually and in fact everybody's names, they're taking on assumed identities of these missing twins. So everybody's name keeps changing. And in one case the character's gender presentation changes. And so you've got to sort of stay on your toes. But it's a delightful text in which both you see how these peers end up getting along with each other, but it's also about trying to have a sense of family, and it gives a very interesting portrait of the rough and tumble sort of America of the mid-19th century. And slaveholding is still going on, and one of the prominent characters who helps the twins is a slave. It's a very fascinating text, and it was a really fun, rollicking read. It's one of those books that you pick up and you don't even know that time is passing because you're sort of flying through it. And what's really exciting is that this is the first of a series. And believe me, this text does kind of end on a cliffhanger, so you definitely will want to get the next one, which says, coming soon. It's called Knife's Edge. So it takes up where this story leaves off. So for those young readers who really enjoy this text, know that another one is coming on its way.
Gwen, this book was so much fun, and for all the reasons that you named, and I want to explore some of the topics that you touched on. But yeah, I was with you. I thought, okay, we've got these twins, and they're both red-haired, and then we've got this other set of twins, Silas and Edwin, who are also red-haired, and then names are changed and identities are assumed, and I'm like, how in the world am I going to keep up with all of these characters? But Larson does a really, really good job of keeping things straight for us. I mean, we do have to kind of keep on your toes, like you said, about who is who. And the art style does help because both sets of twins, although each twin looks very, very similar as twins do, the sets of twins look different. And it's really not that difficult to keep them apart, but it is a little bit of a challenge. But it's, you're having such a great time, and if you ever are confused, you just mainly have to look back a panel or two, and you can find out who's supposed to be who. But the thing about it is, I love what you said about identity, and to me, this book is all about identity, and part of that is, like you said, family is involved in that, and gender is involved in that as well. But I really, really like seeing the different shades of character that we see. While these characters are trying to be someone else, they're still really themselves. There's a great scene where Cleo is they're on the docks. Cleo and who's she with? It's not.
It's Ed. I think she's with Edwin.
Yeah, that I do get confused sometimes.
Okay.
And they see this boy on the docks, and he's a rich kid. And Cleo said, sure, he's got him, and she's referring to parents. Sure, he's got him now, but he'll lose him one day. And then the boy's hat that they're talking about just kind of gets picked up by the wind and sails off in the distance. And she says, personally, I'm glad we got it over with. So you can see that she's kind of a callous person to talk about their parents like that and actually saying, I'm glad we're done with that. But that it really hurts that she doesn't have her father with her. So we do find a lot of great little character pieces like that throughout the book. It does have so many different twists and turns. I mean, it really is kind of an epic adventure. You've got pirates, you've got slavery, you've got narrow escapes, and then you got this pocket watch knife combination, which is like, I guess you would call it the MacGuffin if we were watching an Alfred Hitchcock movie, because it's always this mysterious thing in the back of the story, running throughout the story. And like you said, I am so glad that this is going to continue. This is a really, really wonderful first volume. Everything about it works for me: the writing, the art, everything.
Well, you know what? I think we have the twins wrong. So now I'm going back to make sure that we have the people with them who they're supposed to be. Okay, so basically, I think it's Silas and Alex pair off, and Cora and Cleo. Cleo and Edwin pair off, but they also go by the names Jeremiah and Sam because those are the names of the kids they're supposed to be impersonating. But really, folks, when you're reading it, it's easy to pick up on. It's like afterwards that you almost sort of need a little chart to make sure that you're on the right page. And actually, these are, I will say, Edwin and Silas are different. One of them has some form of mild illness, I guess, or, and is a little bit more sensitive, plays the piano and sings, is more dreamy, and I think that the other one is more active and a little bit has a temper, and is pretty darn smart. And he and Cleo end up kind of starting off not really liking each other at all. And of course, then there's a little spark between them, that you see. And, it's really a sweet book, though. Everything happens really quickly, and you just get the idea that there is no safety net for kids. And it's interesting because my dad grew up during the Depression in New York City, probably the last time in this country when children sometimes could be unaccounted for, and there wasn't a safety net or a system that would at least be making the effort, the gesture towards making sure that they were okay. Mm-hmm. And my father's tales of growing up on the streets of New York City during that time period are pretty harrowing, although exciting too. I mean, my dad had a pretty exciting life, but this really gets at it. This is set at the same time that Horatio Alger wrote Ragged Dick, or Life Among the Bootblacks in New York City, and that was a very big text in the mid part of the 19th century foreshowing how young kids who were on the streets in New York trying to make a living were very often sucked into a life of crime. Alger, of course, was trying to put forward the idea that it was the Irish immigrants who were the heads of gangs and were corrupting young Protestant American youth. So here we go with our immigration issue. So I'm not necessarily putting forward Ragged Dick as awesome, appropriate reading material unless you have a history to go along with it. But it too sets up this idea of the streets as being quite mean, of kids, especially orphan children, really having to fend for themselves as best they can. And that certainly comes across in this text.
Yeah, it definitely does have a Dickensian feel in a lot of ways, and the adventure of it is there. One of the things I really appreciate about the book is the way that it's laid out. I mean, no two pages are the same as far as panel layout. I think it's visually, and I mean this in the best possible way, I think it's visually addictive because every panel is set up differently and your eye just kind of naturally moves along. And it's just amazing how Rebecca Mock seems to know exactly how large to make each panel or how small to make each panel. The story has such a wonderful flow to it, and the color choices are just amazing. I mean, I know we say that a lot about a lot of books, but this one really, really is tremendous. And another thing that I really like about it is, and this brings me back to my early days as a reader, where, you know, sometimes you would pick up those when I was a little kid, we had the Big Little books. You know, and these didn't really have that, but I know a lot of books that were kind of like that had chapter headings, and this book has chapter headings too that are really cool, like Imposters or The Pocket Knife, Tooth and Nail. You know, just really, really exciting. And each of those chapter beginnings has like a panel that kind of like pulls you in, and it's just so much fun to read this book. And I'm so glad that Larson and Mock decided to do this, and it's going to be an ongoing series.
Yeah, and you know, this is one of a couple of, actually, I just realized that every single book we're talking about today is a team effort, and that all of the creators in one way or the other have written their own comics. So they both have been scriptwriters, they both have been artists. And so I think that when you have a collaboration like the one between Larson and Mock, you know, you talked about how beautiful the panel placement is, which it is. And I'm sure that part of that too has to go along with the fact that the person writing the dialogue and the narration has also written her own and drawn her own comics. So that concept of pacing, and probably I can assume that they had a pretty close collaboration. It's sort of really cool to have two comics creators who are experienced in both image and text working together. Yeah,
it's really a wonderful title.
Yeah, it's a great summer read. I think it comes out this week, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
So for great summer reading or at your library. So, you know, yay.
Yay. Well, let's move on to the next book we're going to be talking about today, and that is Secret Coders, Paths, and Portals. Now, this is actually the second book in the Secret Coders series, and if you haven't read the first book, you really do need to read it so that the second one will make any sense, because the second one really jumps you right into the story, leaving off from where the first book left off. So do read the first book. And to give you a hint of what the first book is about, it's about this school called Stately Academy, and it's a school that just has all of these mysteries to be solved. The founder of the school left all these clues and puzzles to challenge the smartest students, and they really have to use their wits and their powers of coding to figure out what's going on in the school. There are secrets to be found. And there's a girl named Hopper that's there, and her friend Enid, and they are trying to solve the mystery of Stately Academy in the first volume. And they do, when the first volume ends, they do get to a point where there's some secrets that are revealed. But then we start with the second volume, and again, here's what they have on the back cover. There's something lurking beneath the surface of Stately Academy, literally. In a secret underground classroom, Hopper, Enid, and Josh discover that the campus was once home to the B School, an institute where teachers, students, and robots work together to unravel the mysteries of coding. Hopper and her friends are eager to follow in this tradition and become top-rate coders. But why are Principal Dean and the rugby team suddenly so interested in their extracurricular activities? So again, you do have to read the first book, but this book is a little bit different, Gwen, in that I think that the action, maybe not the action, but maybe the plot slows down a little bit more in this book in favor of more coding exercises and more coding puzzles. And some of the young readers who read this book might welcome that, because they have more opportunities to use their coding skills and to learn the secrets of the book. And at the same time, we're also learning more about the school and the secrets behind it. So I'm interested to hear what you thought about the second book.
Yeah, it's a book that, well, first of all, I have to say that there are bullies in this book, and the bullies are the members of the rugby team. And they are definitely drawn by Gene Luen Yang, because no one draws bullies like Gene Luen Yang. He has this way of drawing mean young people in such a way that they are just so laughable, and yet their menace comes through. And so, as we've been reading through this, it's interesting because I've spent so much time working on the comics that Yang has drawn, such as American Born Chinese and Boxers and Saints, that are solo projects. I've gotten very used to his line style, but when he collaborates, he has a tendency, for instance, in this text, I think that they're going back and forth. And I can see some of Mike Holmes' style in here, but definitely Yang's drawing of the bullies as just so Gene Yang. And so I really enjoyed that. And the text itself, it is more complicated. I had to think hard and do mathy things, which for me is not necessarily a natural aptitude. But there's something else that Yang sneaks into this book. Yang and Holmes sneak into this book, which I think is wonderful. Hopper is taking a course in Mandarin Chinese. And part of learning Mandarin Chinese involves practicing line strokes. And Hopper tries to get out of doing her homework by programming a robot to do it for her. And of course, she's learning something really valuable. She's learning advanced coding. But she's avoiding learning a language that, when it's explained to her with more care by her teacher, she comes to understand that learning another language is also a lot like coding. And I think that that's a wonderful piece of information for Yang to include in this text, and Holmes as well, because it probably will, if kids are interested in coding, maybe it also will encourage their interest in learning a world language. And I will say that makes it sound like this is an extremely didactic book, but really the didacticism is varied. It's not something that hits you over the head. It's something that I think most kids who will read through this, who are interested in puzzles, will really love what's actually going on in the text. And I thought it was fun. I did all the homework. I did my homework, but it didn't feel like homework. It felt like fun. And I think that's really a characteristic of the Secret Coders series, is that it's got a lot of humor, it's got very relatable teens in it, and it has exciting puzzles that could lead kids to start asking their teachers for more access to things like world languages, things like coding and advanced math classes. So I think it's one of those books that's both funny but also really serves a great purpose.
I think so too. And Gwen, I was thinking too about parents that might be listening to our show today, and they're saying, or they're thinking, well, my kids aren't really into coding. They're not really into that. It sounds like something that they would not be interested in. But as you said, there's so many other lessons here to be learned. I mean, Hopper, yes, is definitely, and her friends are definitely into coding and figuring these puzzles out. but you don't have to be into coding to be able to enjoy this book. I mean, Hopper is also understands that she is kind of an outsider, kind of a nerd, whether that has anything to do with coding or not. And every kid at some point or another in school figures out, I don't quite fit in with this group or with that group, and I'm trying to find my identity. I'm trying to find my group. I'm trying to find my people. And I think this book speaks really well to that, even apart from all the coding stuff, which is a lot of fun. Plus, it's just a great mystery, too.
And also, each kid, Enid and Hopper and Josh, who's there. Josh is this boy who initially was very rude to Hopper, and so she didn't want to be friends with him. But by the end of this text, you can see that they're going to be friends. In fact, she gives him a peck on the cheek, which causes Enid to be very jealous. So you get this idea that probably some sort of triangle is developing there. So it's not some sort of dry text where you're given math problems. There's definitely a storyline. It's carrying things along, and it turns out that each of the characters has a special ability. Josh is very good at typing code quickly, and Enid is very good at figuring out sort of higher order problems, and Hopper is really good at the technical aspect of things. I just dropped the book, so that's what you heard. Sorry. And I'm very good at throwing things around. And so you also see the kids working together to take what are their greatest strengths in order to really achieve something. And so there's that cooperation, like you said, of kids finding their people, their friends with whom they want to cooperate. So I loved it. I love these books.
I do too. And I can't wait for the next one. And just to let parents know, or the young readers that are listening, this is a book that is primarily aimed at probably children between 8 and 12. And if you like this book or this series of books, the third book is scheduled to come out in March of 2017. So you'll have a little bit of time to wait, but during that time you could just reread these again because they're so much fun you would want to reread them. But again, this is the second book in the Secret Coder series, Paths and Portals. But please do make sure that you read the first book first, and it's just called Secret Coders. And that one actually came out last year in September, and you can find probably all of these books at your local library or your bookstore. Unfortunately, DCB Service does not have these books yet, but there are other ways you can find them.
One other thing I'll let readers know is that if they go to secret-coders.com, not only is that the website for the books, but there are activities that kids can do online. There are links for kids to learn how to code. There are character biographies. You get to meet the creators, and you can also subscribe to Gene Luen Yang's email list. So there's all sorts of things so if you like the book and you want to learn more about coding or more about the books, there are videos that are attached to it, which I'm clicking on now because I'm curious. Oh, it's a lesson on how to code.
Oh, awesome.
And so there's a bunch of the first lesson is starting coding, and the second is binary coding. And then on the activities pages, there are all sorts of games that you can play with coding puzzles and links to learning more. So I'm really excited. Usually there's with a series like this, I figured there'd be a web page, and there is. So I'd encourage folks to take a look at that.
Yeah, that would definitely be worth checking out. And after reading these books, you'll definitely want to do that.
And also, kids, if you're listening, learn to code. Ask your teachers about it. Parents, teach your kids to code because it is the future. I'm just saying that. I'm done now. Okay.
You're right.
That's my bit, but it is true. And there's wonderful also, trying to get more young women involved in technology. There are all sorts of organizations across the country that are specifically working towards getting young girls to code. And so, it would be great, if we're listening, as you said, Andy, none of the characters in this text start off with a knowledge of coding. They pick it up slowly and learn it as they go along. And, so I think it would be a great thing for our readers to do, our listeners to do.
I do too. Well, Gwen, our final book that we're looking at today is also by Gene Luen Yang, and art is, this case, by Thien Pham, and that is Level Up. Now, this is kind of a departure for us on the Comics Alternative because normally we discuss just brand new books, but Level Up is actually a reissue that was first published in 2011. And again, this is being reissued. And Gwen, did you read this the first time it came out? I did not.
I did. I read it like super quickly, and that's why, I was excited to see it come on my desk again. But this version of it, it's glossier. And it's interesting too, though, because it gives us a chance to look at yet another collaboration that Gene Luen Yang has done with another comics creator. So that part is really exciting. And the style here is really different than Yang's style when he does his own work. So it's fascinating to see his words in tandem with someone else's images.
And this book, Gwen, is one of those that, when I first started reading it, I thought it was a certain type of book, and then it went somewhere else, and then it went somewhere else. And I wasn't, I mean, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Because it starts out as kind of a very young reader's book, which I'll explain in just a few minutes. And then it gets into more of a teen book, and then actually it gets kind of into an adult-based book. Not that, I mean, there's not anything objectionable about the book, but it kind of just goes over a lot of different areas. But let me tell you a little bit about the book. This book is about Dennis Ouyang. I hope that's the way to say it, is the character. Dennis has always struggled in the shadow of his parents' expectations. Stay focused in high school, do well in college, go to medical school, and become a gastroenterologist. Who doesn't want to become a gastroenterologist, right?
Well, for our young readers, maybe they should know what that means. Do you want to tell them, Andy?
I would prefer not to, but if you want me to.
I can.
Okay.
It's fine. This is the doctor who deals with your colon and your colon health. And so his parents want him to be someone who does what are called colonoscopies, which are sending basically probes into a patient's colon to make sure that they do not have cancerous polyps. They also deal with people who have stomach problems like ulcers and other kinds of upsets. So it's actually a type of medicine that involves using scopes, either from the mouth into the stomach or from the behind up into the colon. So that is what a gastroenterologist does.
And I think we were talking, without getting too personal off the mic, that we have both had colonoscopies in the fairly recent past. and it's one of those things too that everyone, once they get to a certain age, should have done, because you can really find out a lot of things that you can detect a lot of problems before they become big problems.
That's right. And so, all joking aside, if you're an adult over the age of 50, you need to have your baseline screen for your colonoscopy. But if you are 10 years old, feel free to cover your ears and look at the ceiling. That's fine.
But there's so many things about the book that it's like a 10-year-old could probably enjoy it because it's got so much poop humor in the book.
Oh, yeah.
That's just so much fun. But I digress. So. Yes. After Dennis's father passes away, and he's trying to deal with his father's death, as well as academic burnout and his love of video games. And so Dennis has all of these things conflicting in his life, and he goes to medical school, and he gets kicked out. And then things get really, really, really weird. There's something that happens. It's kind of a supernatural type of thing. I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is, but it really changes Dennis's life, and he has to look at where he wants his life to go, and part of this is, where does destiny want him to go, or his parents' wishes. So Level Up, and I love the way this is set up, because Level Up is set up like a video game. You start it, and in the very first page it says press start to begin. And then we get Dennis's early story about how he loved video games as a kid, and his parents really did not encourage that. And, he was into the arcade games and things like that. And one of my favorite panels in this entire book is when Dennis finds out that this friend of his has this thing called a Nintendo, and he can play video games as much as he wants at home for free. And that just blows his mind. And there's a panel where Dennis says, That is the single most amazing thing I have ever heard. And it's just the look on his face. It's just like, the secret of the universe has been revealed to him, that you can play video games at home as much as you want to. And, if you've been a video game junkie like I was as a kid, I was not very good, but, telling any kid you can do the thing that you love the most as much as you want and it doesn't cost anything, there's nothing better than that. And that's what Dennis finds out. But as the story goes on, we see him progress not only in age, but in maturity and in making some life decisions. And each chapter of the book is a different level. Like there's level 1, level 2, level 3. And we see him progressing, and we see him being faced with a lot of these difficult life decisions. What should my major really be? My parents want me to do this, but I really want to do this. And this group of people that I'm hanging out with, this group of friends of mine, I really like them, but I don't know if this is the right group for me. This book covers so many things, Gwen, and like I said, it really starts at a very young level. But by the time the book ends, it's very much dealing with adult matters that grown-ups deal with.
Right, and I think part of it is perspective. I think one of the things that Yang and Pham want readers to think about is the way that we make plans and that we make decisions in life. Those plans and decisions are so often affected by our attitude about the way that we're perceiving something. And this is a text in which the protagonist, Dennis, is encouraged ultimately to see his interests and his gifts in a different light, from another perspective, and to maybe end up following certain paths he might not have thought he was going to follow, but for doing it for his own reasons. And it's a coming of age narrative in that extent. You're right. Many of the books that you and I talk about are texts where the character remains young throughout the text. So we don't have that coming of age situation where the character, this is really more of a Bildungsroman, or a text that deals with a young person, not only coming of age, but also developing a vocation. And so it's tapped into a very long tradition in Western literature of focusing on a young person learning to negotiate with the society in which he or she is living in order to live a life that's a balance between what that person might want and perhaps what society needs. That makes it sound like, again, a really serious text, which it is on one level. Mm-hmm. But it's also, as you said, filled with humor and jokes. There's another thing that I did want to bring up, Andy, and that is the use of color in this comic. They're basically the panels are drawn in watercolor with beautiful, beautiful tones that serve to show the protagonist Dennis's moods throughout the comic. And it's so interesting because I'm so used to seeing Yang use very bright colors and that clear line style when he does his solo comics. So seeing these softer tones and characters who are drawn in a style that's still realistic, but is realistic, but is a little bit more on the iconic side of things. It's just really exciting to look at Yang's words in a new context. So that part of it is wonderful. But I know you wanted to talk a little bit too about Yang himself.
I do, but I kind of wanted to pick up on what you mentioned too about we talked about Secret Coders and Mike Holmes and his art style, and the thing that's so great about Yang is so many different creators, artists especially, can have different interpretations of what his stories are. And you can look at something like Level Up or Secret Coders or American Born Chinese or Boxers and Saints that are done by different artists, and you get a different flavor. It's all still unmistakably Yang, but mm-hmm. each artist brings a little something different to the table. And I wanted to point out too that one of the things that Level Up does, I think in a very subtle way, is it explores a lot of who Yang is. Yang has an Asian background. Obviously, tradition is very important in his family, and that comes across in this book. Also, one thing that doesn't get talked about an awful lot is Yang's faith. And he is, that does come across. All three of these things, the Asian background, the tradition, and faith, all have elements in this book that are very important. But they're kind of done seamlessly. And again, I like what you mentioned about the art and how that And it takes on a different atmosphere, even though, like I said, there's different artists at work here, but it's still Yang's story.
Right, absolutely. I was really fortunate last month to listen to 2 lectures by Yang in which he talked about how his upbringing impacts his current work as a comics creator. And he mentioned both sort of working his faith into his comics as a way of showing how he, like his characters, struggle to understand his or their place in the world, and the way that religion is one more sort of thing that he can utilize to try to understand himself. And he said it in such a beautiful way. And he also talked about growing up in a household where his parents did have very strong expectations for him. And, he found a way to meld his love of math with his love of drawing. And you see that coming through in the character of Dennis throughout Level Up.
Yeah, this is one of those books that kind of caught me by surprise. As I said before, I was kind of expecting one thing and got another thing. And I was pleasantly surprised at not being able to figure out how the story was going to end. Gwen, I'm not really sure who to recommend this book to, because it does work on some level as a teen book. It works on some level as a younger reader book, and it works on some levels as an adult book.
Well, let's just use the term all ages, which the comic industry has used for decades, to just say, I'm not sure. You make up your own mind.
That's right. Whoever you are, you should read it.
Yeah. But I would say that unlike many of the books that we put forward that probably do belong clearly in a certain classification, this book really is more all ages, and I think it would be enjoyable for really any reader.
I think so too. Well, Gwen, we've talked about 3 great new books that we hope everybody will go check out. Again, these are not available as yet at DCB Service or their sister company In Stock Trades, but we do encourage you to go to that website, dcbservice.com, and check out some of the things that they do have. You'll find some great discounts. And when you do get your comics there, get in touch with us and let us know what you think. You can contact us by going to our website at comicsalternative.com. Over on the right-hand side of your browser, you'll see a tab that reads Send Voicemail. Click on that, and from the comfort of your own desktop or mobile device, you can shoot us a message through the wonderful science of SpeakPipe. Or, if you want to do it a little bit slower version, you can contact us on the telephone. Maybe even a rotary dial.
From your horseless carriage.
That's right. We should get Morse code set up so that they could contact us.
Or just coding in general. That would be great. Yeah.
Well, if you're into the numbers, you can call us at 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427. Or you can get in touch with us by email if you want it to be a little faster at the number 2guys@comicsalternative.com. Or you can get in touch with us individually. I'm Wolverton at comicsalternative.com. And Gwen, how about you?
Well, technically I'm Gwen at comicsalternative.com, but my university is going through an email server switch. And so a lot of my messages are getting lost. The best way to get in touch with me in the interim is gwen.tarbox@wmich.edu, or just 2guys at Comics Alternative. There's another way that you can keep up with us, though, and that is on Twitter, where we announce new content to our podcast and updates to our blog. And there we are at the number 2 guys with PhDs.
That's right. And you can also find us on Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Google+, Goodreads, Pinterest, and, I didn't forget this time, Gwen, Spotify.
Yay!
We are on Spotify. And we also have a YouTube channel, so if you want to access us that way, you can. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes, stream us on Stitcher, you can find us on TuneIn, and you can discover all of our episodes and our reviews and comics-related commentary on our blog at comicsalternative.com.
Great. Well, it's been so much fun today, Andy.
It's always fun talking with you, Gwen, and I can't wait till next time we talk about some more great books. Until then, I'm Andy.
And I'm Gwen. See you soon.